None believed I could. This is Singapore's first bronze medal for fencing, and I never thought I could make history. Indeed, I can do all things through Christ who gave me strength.
Lim Wei Wen from Pastor Ashes and Pastor Wendy's team represents Singapore in a sport he once knew nothing about. It was during his IT school days when he first got introduced to fencing.
I started with zero knowledge about these sports. During the intro presentations, I made a proud remark. What's so difficult about swinging a team metal sword? That remark was heard by a senior fencer, and she challenged me for a friendly exchange. I was utterly defeated and went home with bruises all over my body. But that fired up my competitive spirit. Very quickly, I was able to outplay and shine above the rest, and fencing became a large part of my life.
In contrary to all these, Wei Wen's growing up days wasn't as smooth sailing. Violence, anger, and misery revolved around his growing up days.
My dad was in prison when I was just an infant, and I grew up with a mom who was a gambling addict. She gambled away all our family possessions. Greatest nightmare began when she borrowed money from the loan sharks. We were constantly harassed and fearful. Eventually my mom, my caretaker then, ran away. Till today, she has not returned. I was only 10 years old then. Thank God, my grandparents and auntie adopted me. I really appreciate them for this, but it didn't stop me from feeling lonely and resentful. I constantly thought, why is God so unfair to me? I was outcast by my schoolmate for being in a broken family, and I hate the way I was subjected to the judgmental and discriminating eyes from my relative. I didn't like to go home, and so I hang out late into nights with friends who taught me how to smoke and drink. I even joined gangs and got involved into gang fights. Soon after, I got addicted into cyber gaming. My gaming addiction caused me to quit school entirely, and I was only in Sec 2 then. I enjoy the feeling of winning and get pretty upset when I lose. This lifestyle fulfilled my dreams of becoming a professional gamer. I was recruited into a professional gaming team and represent Singapore in many local competitions and international competitions. I felt that it was God's plan, because my long hours of gaming lead me away from my vices, and I drift away from my bad friends and cut off all ties with the gang.
Things were rough for Wei Wen's fencing days too. His grandmother, whom he is closest to, fell ill due to stroke and was bedridden. Hence, Wei Wen was forced to stop fencing and find a proper job to support his grandparents financially. All these ups and downs overwhelmed him, and he blamed God for this predicament.
My auntie, who was a believer, constantly prayed for me, talked to me about God, and tried many times to invite me to church. One day, out of obligation, I decided to join her for church service. During the service, I was touched, but I still refused to accept Christ. I felt then that nothing can be done with my miserable life. But God is good. He did not forsake me. During this period of time, I was approached by the Fencing Singapore Federation, who recommended me for a sports scholarship. This was the financial support I needed. However, this final application was rejected as I had a year break looking after my grandmother. I was disappointed. Pinta, my good friend, who I met through cyber gaming, reached out to me. He did not look down on my past and even told me that he would pray for my scholarship. And God answered my prayer. My scholarship was reconsidered and accepted by the Sports Council. But I simply cannot accept it. It was God answered my prayer, and thought that Lady Luck was on my side. I gladly accepted it and started my career as a national fencing sportsman for Singapore.
Pinta continued to reach out to Wei Wen, spending time with him over meetups and meals, and one day, Wei Wen received an invitation to Pinta's testimony sharing session at a cell meeting.
At the sharing, I was moved by his testimony. I could see how God changed his life. With all the past problems, stress of life and my grandmother's sickness, I became lost and depressed. In desperation, I contacted Pinta and asked to join his cell meeting. I thought, if I will open up my heart and pray to God, He may help me. During the cell meeting, I shared with Pinta and opened up to his cell leader about my life. I wept non-stop and poured everything to them. They didn't despise my past and embraced me with love and comfort, and told me that what I need was simply surrender myself to God. And the encounter weekend can help me deal with all the anger and hatred that kept me captive for all these years. For that moment, I decided to accept Christ wholeheartedly.
Today, Wei Wen attends church and cell meetings regularly and attributes his every success in his sporting career to God. During the recent 2014 Commonwealth Games in November, Wei Wen broke through again. He clinched a gold medal in fencing, a first for Singapore. Wei Wen continued to believe that God has a greater purpose in store for him, and he will keep fighting the good fight of faith.
2 or 3 times I had a false dawn.